The game just ended his own career. What started as a lie about Kendrick Lamar turned into the most catastrophic self-destruction in hip-hop history. J-Rock, Spider-Lock, and Kendrick's Bodyguard just dropped receipts so devastating they could bury a legacy overnight. This story is absolutely insane.
Everybody thought the game was just defending himself after Punch from TDE brought up an old track. That was the version people repeated online. But what happened next exposed something way darker. The game went on his podcast and attacked Kendrick's Bodyguard, claimed he discovered Kendrick, said he skipped the pop-out concert on purpose, and then told TMZ he's the king of the West Coast over Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, you heard that right. And now J-Rock, 2T's, and Spider-Lock are responding with evidence that's tearing apart every single word he said. This whole narrative is twisting into something nobody expected.
Let me break down exactly what triggered this nuclear meltdown. It all started when Punch, the president of Top Dog Entertainment, resurfaced the 2009 track Kendrick made called The Heart Part 1. And on that track, Kendrick clearly documented how the game rejected him when he was trying to get on. Kendrick literally rapped about how the game wouldn't give him a chance, how he got turned away, how doors were slammed in his face before Dr. Dre finally believed in him. That track sat in the archives for 16 years. Nobody really paid attention to it. But when Punch brought it back, he basically co-signed Kendrick's side of the story. He posted it with the caption that made it clear the game is lying about his history with Kendrick. And instead of taking the L quietly, the game decided to go full scorched earth. He jumped on his Back on Fig podcast days later and went after 2T's, Kendrick's Day One bodyguard and TDE's head of security. The game straight up said 2T's wasn't even around back then, claims he didn't know what conversations happened behind closed doors, and accused him of clout chasing for Kendrick. Now here's where this gets absolutely wild. 2T's has photo evidence from 2009. He's literally in tour footage. He's documented in the exact timeline the game is trying to rewrite. Fans online immediately started posting screenshots, old videos, and behind-the-scenes content showing 2T's was right there the whole time. The internet turned into full-blown investigators. People started pulling up archived interviews, Instagram posts from years ago, even old MySpace photos. They cross-referenced timelines, compared stories from different interviews the game did over the years, and found massive contradictions everywhere. Then, the game tried explaining why he missed Kendrick's legendary pop-out concert in June 2024. You remember that historic event, right? Bloods and Crips stood together on stage, the entire West Coast unified under Kendrick's leadership. Dr. Dre, Schoolboy Q, J-Rock, Tyler the Creator, YG, Roddy Ricch, everyone was there. The game's excuse? He said he sat it out on purpose because there was too much gang politics surrounding him and he didn't want to ruin Kendrick's moment. But in the same breath, he claimed his presence would have overshadowed the entire show. Think about that logic for a second. He's saying he stayed away out of respect, but also claiming he's so important that showing up would have stolen Kendrick's shine. That doesn't even make sense. And fans immediately called it out. People started posting the full lineup from the pop-out. Dr. Dre was there, every TDE member was there, every West Coast legend was there, except the game. His name wasn't on any promotional material, he wasn't in any footage, he wasn't mentioned by anyone on stage. The truth became obvious real fast. The game wasn't invited, period. And now he's trying to spin his exclusion as some noble sacrifice he made for Kendrick's benefit. Twitter detectives put together side-by-side comparisons showing who performed at the pop-out versus who wasn't there. The game's name sat alone in the not invited column, and folks online started asking the brutal question. If you're really the king of the West Coast, why weren't you at the biggest West Coast event in a decade? That's when 2T's came back even harder. According to reports from Hot 97, Complex, and multiple hip-hop outlets, 2T's doubled down on everything. He said the game never tried to sign Kendrick, that he's rewriting history for attention, and that he was physically present the entire era the game claims to remember differently. Here's what makes this absolutely lethal for the game. 2T's isn't speculating. He's not guessing. He is the living receipt. He was there in 2009. He's in the tour footage. He's in behind-the-scenes photos. He's documented in TDE's archives. When the game tried dismissing him as irrelevant, 2T's basically said, "Try me. I've got documentation that will end you." And the hip-hop community dubbed this the Battle of the Receipts, except the game showed up completely unarmed. He's got nothing but contradictory stories and hurt feelings. Meanwhile, 2T's is sitting on evidence, photos, timestamps, and witnesses. Fans are now asking, if 2T's has this much proof, what else is he sitting on? Some people think TDE has an entire archive of evidence ready to deploy if the game keeps lying. Others believe 2T's is just the first wave of a coordinated exposure campaign that's going to get way worse for the game. But it didn't stop there. J-Rock, Kendrick's Day One TDE brother and Compton legend, publicly responded to the game's podcast. And he didn't need paragraphs, he didn't need a diss track. According to Hot New Hip Hop, J-Rock posted one single GIF. It showed someone making the most disrespectful, disgusted face imaginable. The universal expression for, "You're embarrassing yourself and we're all watching you self-destruct." Now, J-Rock doesn't engage with nonsense. He's TDE royalty. He was on stage at the pop-out. He's witnessed Kendrick's entire journey from Compton to the Super Bowl. For him to publicly mock the game means TDE has officially declared war. This wasn't shade. This was an execution order. And the message was crystal clear. We're not even taking you seriously enough to respond with words. You're a joke. Hip-hop insiders are saying this is the most unified TDE and been since they obliterated Drake. They're circling the wagons around Kendrick, and the game is trapped in the crosshairs with nowhere to run. Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking into place, and you realize why the game can't stop talking about Kendrick. The game has been dealing with a serious relevance problem for years now. His last major album that people actually talked about was years ago. His recent releases barely make noise. Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar is at the absolute peak of his powers. Pulitzer Prize winner, multiple Grammys including Album of the Year, Super Bowl halftime show performer. Not Like Us became a global phenomenon. The pop-out concert unified the entire West Coast. He's got a sold-out stadium tour with SZA coming in 2025. Universally acknowledged as the greatest rapper alive. Think about that contrast. The game went from being on fire in the mid-2000s with the documentary and Doctor's Advocate to struggling for attention in 2025. Back in his peak, he was getting cosigns from Dr. Dre and 50 Cent, moving serious units, headlining shows. But now, he's doing podcasts, dropping mixtapes nobody's talking about, and inserting himself into other people's stories just to get headlines. That kind of fall off hits different when you watch someone you rejected become everything you wanted to be. And here's the brutal reality the game can't accept. In 2009, he had the chance to sign Kendrick Lamar. He could have been the one who discovered the greatest rapper of this generation. Dr. Dre was about to swoop in, but the game had first access. He could have built his entire legacy around saying, "I gave Kendrick his start." But he fumbled it. He rejected Kendrick, and he watched Dr. Dre give Kendrick the exact cosign he denied. Now, imagine living with that regret every single day. Watching Kendrick win a Pulitzer Prize, watching him headline Coachella, watching him perform at the Super Bowl, watching him become the most critically acclaimed and commercially dominant rapper of the 2010s and 2020s, all while knowing you had first shot and said no. That's psychological torture. And instead of accepting it, the game's brain created a false narrative to protect his ego. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. When reality doesn't match your self-image, your mind invents stories to cope. So the game started telling people he discovered Kendrick, that he wanted to sign him,
that he opened doors, that he's still the king. None of it's true, but saying it out loud makes the regret hurt less. And this isn't the first time the game has done this. Hip-hop historians are exposing a disturbing pattern that spans 2 decades. He built his entire career on the G-Unit cosign with 50 Cent and Dr. Dre, then turned the 50 Cent beef into a 20-year relevance strategy. He's mentioned 50 Cent more than his own albums at this point. He inserted himself into the Drake versus Meek Mill beef when nobody asked for his opinion. He just started throwing shots to get headlines. He engaged with Tekashi 6ix9ine during his peak controversy era, knowing it would generate clicks and chaos. He's name-dropped Eminem hundreds of times, positioning himself as a peer when Eminem barely acknowledges his existence. The game's entire survival playbook is the same every time. Attach yourself to legends, tell stories that inflate your importance, use their names when your own music can't carry you, rewrite history to make yourself look better, repeat until exposed. The difference this time, Kendrick documented the truth in real time. The game can't manipulate this narrative. The receipts are locked in forever on a track from 2009, and TDE is back in Kendrick's version with witnesses, photos, and timelines. But there's another layer to this timing. On December 6, 2025, the game dropped a Gangsta Grillz mixtape with DJ Drama called Every Movie Needs a Trailer. Fans immediately started dissecting lyrics for Kendrick disses. According to Hot New Hip Hop, there's a line that people interpret as either a direct shot at Kendrick or the most poorly worded compliment in rap history that sounds like a diss. Then the game panicked. He rushed to social media twice to clarify he wasn't dissing Kendrick. He posted, "The internet is tripping, I wasn't dissing Kendrick, y'all reading too much into it." But nobody believes it. The theory gaining traction online is that the game recorded subliminals before Punch dropped the track in 2009, thinking he could sneak diss Kendrick without consequences. Then Punch unleashed the nuclear bomb and the game started desperately backpedaling. Hip-hop detectives on Reddit, TikTok, and Twitter are now analyzing every bar on the mixtape, building timelines of when it was recorded versus when the track leaked, comparing his tone and energy to previous interviews, and cross-referencing his contradictory statements. The game now has to defend every single word he says about the West Coast, because the culture assumes he's taking jealousy-fueled shots at Kendrick, and that's exactly what happens when you lose all credibility. Everything you say gets twisted because nobody trusts you anymore. Put all that together and you see the perfect recipe for a public meltdown. Declining relevance, crushing regret, jealousy of someone who surpassed you in every way, a desperate need for attention, and an ego too big to just take the L and move on. The game is trapped in a nightmare of his own creation. And instead of staying quiet and letting it blow over, he keeps making it exponentially worse with every interview, every podcast, every social media post.
But here's the part that really hits different and shows you how deep this situation goes beyond just rap beef. This isn't just about 2 rappers arguing over who said what 16 years ago. This is about a man publicly unraveling because he can't accept the consequences of his own decisions. And what makes it even more painful to watch is that the game is doing this to himself. Nobody forced him to go on that podcast and attack 2Ts. Nobody made him claim he skipped the pop-out on purpose. Nobody told him to call himself king of the West Coast over Kendrick Lamar. He chose all of that, and every choice made his situation worse. Kendrick Lamar hasn't said one single word, not one interview, not one tweet, not one Instagram story, not one subliminal bar. Complete silence. And that silence is louder than any diss track could ever be. Kendrick is preparing for his 2025 stadium tour with SZA. He just performed at the Super Bowl in front of the entire world. He's at the absolute peak of his powers, and he's not wasting a single second of energy on someone who's already defeated. That silence is psychological warfare. It says, you're not worth my time. You're not on my level. You're not even a threat. You're nothing. And that silence is torturing the game's ego more than any response ever could. Because the game needs Kendrick to acknowledge him. He needs the engagement.
He needs the attention. He needs to feel like he matters in the conversation. And Kendrick is denying him even that. It's the ultimate power move. Complete dominance through complete silence. The game is screaming into the void, making increasingly desperate claims, attacking Kendrick's team, declaring himself king, and Kendrick is just existing at a higher level, not even looking down. But the emotional toll this has taken on the game is visible in every interview. You can hear the desperation in his voice when he talks about Kendrick. You can see the frustration when people don't believe his version of events. You can feel the regret buried underneath all the lies. And honestly, it's sad. Not sad in a way that makes you feel sorry for him because he's doing this to himself, but sad in the way watching someone self-destruct in real time is always sad. Sad because he had a legitimate legacy with the documentary and Doctor's Advocate, and now that's all getting overshadowed by this catastrophic meltdown. Sad because if he had just stayed quiet, most people wouldn't have even paid attention to that 2009 track, but now it's the biggest story in hip-hop. Sad because his ego won't let him take accountability, apologize, and move on. So instead, we're watching him dig his grave deeper every single day. This is what happens when you let jealousy, insecurity, and desperation control your decisions. This is what happens when you can't accept that someone you rejected became greater than you ever were. This is what happens when your need for relevance overrides your common sense. The game is destroying his own legacy in real time, and Kendrick doesn't have to do anything but watch.
Now let's dive deeper into the receipts that are absolutely burying the game's credibility, because this situation has layers on top of layers, and each one is more damaging than the last. Spiderlock, a G-Unit affiliate and LA hip-hop insider who was actually around during the game's come-up, publicly invited the game to his platform, but the way he worded it sent chills through anyone paying attention. Spiderlock basically said, "I remember some things that might be different from what you're saying. Let's have a conversation." That's not an invitation, that's a setup. That's a trap disguised as a friendly conversation. Spiderlock knows the LA scene inside and out. He was there during the G-Unit era. He witnessed the game's rise and fall. If he's suggesting the game's story has inconsistencies, he's sitting on ammunition ready to fire. And now the hip-hop community is watching with bloodthirsty anticipation. If the game accepts Spiderlock's invitation, Spiderlock could expose more lies on camera in real time. If the game refuses, he looks terrified of someone who knows the truth. Either way, he loses. Fans are begging for the game to take the bait so they can watch him get obliterated live. People are already making popcorn memes, countdown posts, prediction threads about what Spiderlock is going to reveal. But let's talk about the most insane claim the game made that broke the internet into a million pieces. On December 10th, 2025, the game told TMZ that he, not Kendrick Lamar, is the king of the West Coast. Let that sink in. The man who just got exposed by a 16-year-old track, who's being called a liar by multiple TDE insiders, who wasn't invited to the biggest West Coast event in history, who's watching his credibility disintegrate in real time, claims he's the king of the region Kendrick Lamar completely dominates? Let's do a reality check. Kendrick's 2024 and 2025. Pulitzer Prize winner, the only rapper ever. Multiple Grammys, including Album of the Year. Super Bowl halftime show performer in February 2025. Not Like Us became a global phenomenon. The pop-out concert unified the entire West Coast. Sold-out stadium tour with SZA coming in 2025. Universally acknowledged as the greatest rapper alive. The game's 2024 and 2025 released the Gangsta Grillz mixtape nobody's talking about, got exposed as a liar about Kendrick, wasn't invited to the pop-out, got called out by everyone in TDE, spiraling into public humiliation, making delusional claims while Kendrick performs at the Super Bowl. The cognitive dissonance required to make this claim is beyond human comprehension. Social media didn't just mock him, people started genuinely questioning his mental health. Memes flooded every platform.
Side-by-side photos of Kendrick at the Super Bowl versus the game on a podcast, comparison charts of their achievements, jokes about the game needing a wellness check. One viral tweet said, "The game really looked at Kendrick's Pulitzer, Grammys, Super Bowl performance, and stadium tour and said, 'Yeah, but I'm king though.' That got 400,000 likes. This wasn't just a bad take, this was a psychotic break from reality broadcasted to millions, and it's not getting better. Reports are coming in that more people from Kendrick's early days are preparing to speak up. 2T's already doubled down. J-Rock threw savage shade. Who else from TDE is waiting to drop bombs? Some fans are theorizing there are dozens of people who witnessed the game's rejection of Kendrick, and they're just waiting for the right moment to speak up. There are whispers that Kendrick has more tracks in the vault. The 2009 track was on an obscure mixtape most people never heard. What else did Kendrick document? Reddit users are speculating Kendrick has an entire archive of unreleased tracks addressing fake mentors, industry snakes, and people who doubted him. Imagine if Kendrick drops a whole project of receipts. That would be the most devastating musical assassination in hip-hop history. And here's what's really scary for the game. Some fans think he's desperate enough to release an actual diss track aimed at Kendrick, but that would be career suicide. Kendrick demolished Drake, the biggest rapper alive, with infinite resources and a global fan base. What would Kendrick do to the game? It would be like watching a heavyweight champion fight an amateur. Brutal, swift, humiliating. Kendrick would end the game's legacy in 3 minutes. But the wildest theory circulating online is that TDE is planning a coordinated exposure campaign. The timing of Punch's post, 2T's statements, and J-Rock's response feels too perfect to be random. Some insiders believe TDE is strategically destroying the game's credibility piece by piece, letting him dig his own grave deeper with each response. And then there's the question everyone's asking. Will Kendrick address this on his 2025 tour? The stadium tour with SZA is coming. Will Kendrick bring out TDE members on stage to send a message? Imagine Kendrick performing in LA, bringing out Punch, 2T's, J-Rock, and the entire TDE crew while the game watches from home. That would be the ultimate public humiliation. People are already buying tickets hoping to witness that moment live. The anticipation is building, the pressure is mounting, and the game is trapped in a situation that gets worse every single day.
Let's zoom out for a second and talk about how this whole situation fits into a much bigger pattern in hip-hop. Because what we're witnessing isn't just about the game and Kendrick. This is about ego, legacy, and the dangers of rewriting your own history. Hip-hop has always been a culture built on authenticity. You can't fake where you came from. You can't lie about your contributions. The streets always fact-check you. The internet never forgets. And if you try to claim credit for something you didn't do, eventually the truth surfaces and destroys you. We've seen this happen before. Artists who inflated their stories, exaggerated their influence, attached themselves to bigger names to stay relevant. And every single time when the receipts came out, their credibility got obliterated. But the game's situation is unique because he's not just exaggerating, he's actively contradicting documented evidence. He's attacking witnesses who were physically present. He's making claims that are so easily disprovable that people can fact-check him in 30 seconds on Google. And the wildest part? He's doing all of this while Kendrick Lamar is at the absolute pinnacle of rap. If Kendrick was washed up or irrelevant, maybe the game's claims wouldn't sound so delusional. But Kendrick just performed at the Super Bowl. He just unified the entire West Coast. He's about to do a massive stadium tour. His cultural dominance is undeniable. So when the game says he's the king over Kendrick, it's like watching someone claim they're taller than a mountain while standing at the base looking up. It's objectively, observably, factually wrong, and everyone can see it except him. Now, some people have asked, why is the game doing this? Why can't he just let it go? The answer is complicated. Part of it is ego, part of it is regret, part of it is desperation, but a huge part of it is the way social media and internet culture rewards controversy. The game knows that every time he says something outrageous about Kendrick, it generates headlines, tweets, YouTube videos, podcast discussions. Even negative attention is still attention. Even if people are clowning him, they're still talking about him. And for someone whose music isn't generating buzz anymore, controversy becomes the only way to stay in the conversation. But there's a limit to how far that strategy works. At some point, you cross the line from controversial figure people love to debate to pathetic joke everyone's laughing at. And the game crossed that line weeks ago. Now he's trapped. If he keeps talking, he makes it worse. If he stops talking, people assume he's hiding because he got exposed. There's no good move left. He painted himself into a corner, and the only way out is to admit he lied, apologize, and accept his place in hip-hop history. But his ego won't let him do that, so instead, we're watching a slow-motion car crash that keeps getting worse with every new interview, every podcast appearance, every TMZ interaction. And meanwhile, the rest of the hip-hop world is just observing in a mix of shock, amusement, and pity. Shock that someone would lie this blatantly, amusement at how bad the lies are, pity that a rapper who had real talent and real success is now going to be remembered for this catastrophic meltdown. People have also started comparing the game situation to other rappers who destroyed their legacies, artists who had everything, who were respected, who had influence but let their egos and insecurities ruin it all. The comment sections are full of, "This is giving the same energy as when insert rapper did insert career-ending move." And the lessons here are clear. Protect your legacy. Don't let jealousy make you lie. Don't try to rewrite history when people have receipts. Don't attack people who were actually there. And most importantly, know when to stay quiet. The game violated every single one of those rules, and now he's paying the price in front of the entire world. But the story's not over, not even close. Because the game is still out here doing interviews, he's still on social media, he's still making claims, which means more exposures are coming, more people are going to speak up, more receipts are going to drop, and every new development is going to make this situation worse for him. There's no path to redemption that doesn't involve full accountability. And based on everything we've seen, that's not happening anytime soon.
What we're seeing here is bigger than just one rapper having a meltdown. This is a cultural moment that's going to be studied for years, and it teaches some brutal lessons about fame, ego, and the internet age. Lesson number 1, the truth always surfaces. You can lie for 16 years. You can tell the same false story over and over. But in the digital age, everything is documented. Old tracks resurface, witnesses speak up, timelines get reconstructed on Reddit and Twitter. The truth always wins eventually. The game thought he could rewrite his history with Kendrick because most people didn't remember the details from 2009. But he didn't account for the fact that Kendrick literally documented the rejection on wax. He didn't account for TDE's loyalty. He didn't account for the internet's obsession with fact-checking everything. Lesson number 2, document your journey in real time. Kendrick showed the blueprint. He recorded his truth while it was happening. He left receipts on wax. He built an archive that protects his legacy forever. Now, 16 years later, nobody can lie about what happened because Kendrick already told the story. That's powerful. That's smart. That's how you protect yourself from people trying to take credit for your success. Lesson number 3, loyalty beats clout every single time. Kendrick aligned himself with TDE, a family that values loyalty, integrity, and long-term vision. When someone attacked his legacy, they went to war for him. Punch co-signed his story. 2T's called out the lies. J-Rock threw shade. The whole squad mobilized. Meanwhile, the game is alone. He burned bridges with G-Unit. He's feuded with dozens of rappers. He has no crew defending him, no cosigns, no backup, just him against the world. And that's what happens when you spend 20 years clout chasing instead of building genuine relationships. Lesson number 4, silence is power. Kendrick hasn't said one word, and that silence is more devastating than any diss track. He's letting the game self-destruct while he focuses on making history. That's mastery. That's control. That's knowing you've already won. Lesson number 5, your ego can destroy you. The game could have taken the L quietly. He could have ignored Punch's post. He could have let the story fade. But his ego made him double down, attack witnesses, claim he's king, and trigger a war he cannot win. His ego is literally ending his legacy in real time. The broader conversation here is about responsibility. When you're a public figure, when you have a platform, when you have influence, your words matter. Lying about your history doesn't just affect you, it disrespects everyone who was actually there.
It misleads your fans. It damages the culture's trust. The game thought he could get away with it because he's been getting away with it for years. But Kendrick's rise exposed the lie. And now the whole world is watching the game pay the price. This is also a warning to anyone else thinking about rewriting their history. The internet is forever. Receipts are forever. Witnesses are forever. You might get away with it for a while, but eventually the truth comes out. And when it does, the fallout is brutal. So where does this leave the game? And more importantly, where does this go from here? Because this story is far from over. The game has only one path to redemption, and it requires something his ego will never allow. He'd have to admit he lied, fully and completely. No, I misspoke, or people misunderstood me. Just a straight-up confession. He'd have to acknowledge Kendrick's greatness without trying to take credit. He'd have to apologize to TDE, to 2Ts, to everyone he disrespected. He'd have to stop talking about Kendrick and focus on his own legacy. And he'd have to accept his place as a good rapper who had success but wasn't the legend he wanted to be. If the game did those 5 things, the hip-hop community would respect the accountability. It wouldn't erase the damage, but it would show growth, maturity, humility. But he won't. He physically cannot. His ego is too big, his insecurity is too deep, his need for relevance is too all-consuming. So instead, we're going to watch the game continue to spiral. More contradictory statements, more people exposing him, more credibility destroyed, more desperate claims, more public humiliation. And eventually, he's going to be remembered not for the documentary or Doctor's Advocate, which were legitimately good albums that deserved respect. He's going to be remembered as the man who lied about Kendrick Lamar and got obliterated by a 16-year-old track while the entire world watched him self-destruct. That's his legacy now. That's what people will associate with his name. Not his music, not his contributions, just this catastrophic meltdown. The questions everyone's asking are, will more TDE insiders speak up? Will Kendrick ever break his silence? Will the game accept Spider-Lock's invitation? Will he release a diss track and make it infinitely worse? And here's the scariest part for the game. Every single one of those scenarios ends badly for him. If more people speak up, more lies get exposed. If Kendrick finally responds, it's over. If he goes on Spider-Lock's show, he gets cooked. If he drops a diss track, Kendrick annihilates him. There is no winning move left on the board. He's in checkmate and he's still trying to play. The internet is buzzing with theories about what happens next. Some think TDE is building to a big reveal, some coordinated moment where they drop all the receipts at once and end this permanently. Others think Kendrick's gonna address it on stage during his tour, maybe bring out the whole TDE crew in LA and make a statement without saying a word. Either way, the pressure is building, the anticipation is real, and the game is trapped in the center of a storm he created with nowhere to hide. This is hip-hop history unfolding live, and the whole culture is watching to see how much worse it can possibly get before the game finally stops talking.
So here's where we're at. The game triggered a 72-hour meltdown that exposed 16 years of lies. Punch co-signed Kendrick's story, 2Ts came with receipts, J-Rock threw devastating shade, Spider-Lock laid a trap, and Kendrick, he hasn't said a word, because he doesn't need to. The game is destroying himself. This isn't just beef. This is a psychological breakdown playing out across every platform. This is what happens when ego, jealousy, and desperation collide with documented truth. This is what happens when you lie about someone who already put the real story on wax. The game thought he could rewrite history. He was wrong. And now the entire hip-hop world is watching him pay the price in the most public, most humiliating way possible. And the wildest part? This is just the beginning. More people are going to speak up, more receipts are going to drop, the game's going to make more contradictory statements, and every single development is going to make this worse. The question isn't if the game's legacy survives, the question is, how much worse can this possibly get before it's finally over? Stay locked in, because this story is evolving every single day. More details are dropping, more clues are surfacing. Reports say Spider-Lock is still waiting for the game's response. TDE insiders are allegedly sitting on more evidence, and Kendrick's stadium tour is coming, which means the whole West Coast is about to see the real king perform live while the game watches from the sidelines. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the game will ever admit the truth, or is his ego gonna destroy him completely? Do you think Kendrick will ever break his silence, or is the silence the ultimate power move? And who from TDE do you think speaks up next? Make sure you like this video if this breakdown connected all the dots for you. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single update, because we're covering every twist that drops. I appreciate you for rocking with me through this insane story. And remember, in hip-hop, the truth isn't optional, it's inevitable. You can't rewrite history when the receipts are already locked in forever. The lies expire, the culture never forgets. And when you come for a legend like Kendrick Lamar, you better make sure your story's airtight. Because the game just learned the hardest lesson of his career. The truth always catches up. And when it does, there's nowhere to hide, nowhere to run, and no amount of lying that can save you from the reckoning. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.